Today's episode is sponsored by Alkion, effortless backups and unmatched security for Microsoft 365. Visit them today at alkion.ai. In today's episode, I'm going to check out the new Microsoft Purview Compliance Admin Center. It's had a major facelift, and I must admit, it's looking pretty good. So if you're ready for a deep dive, let's go. Hey everyone, nice to see you. How are you? Andy here. Now, on today's episode, I thought we would take a look at the new shiny Microsoft Purview. It's the new compliance admin center, and I've got to admit, it's looking actually pretty nice. What they've done is they've basically taken the very untidy compliance stuff from the Azure portal and also the kind of really increasing bloated look of the compliance portal in Microsoft 365, and we have this nice new kind of unified tool. So it's really nice to see everything coming together to create, I suppose, what you might call a single pane of glass, which is going to be very welcomed by compliance folks out there, I'm sure. Now, just to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we would love for you to come on board. So bump the subscribe button and ring the bell and come and join my learning community. And if you'd like more, then why not consider signing up to my Patreon site? Here you'll get access to full courses and, of course, a monthly Zoom call and a whole lot more as well. Okay, so without any further ado, I think we'll jump in and check out Microsoft Purview, the new compliance admin center. Enjoy. So I'm kicking off my demo here in the classic Microsoft Defender portal. You can find this at compliance.microsoft.com. And a lot of people are asking, why on earth are they moving yet again to another portal? The simple reason is their Defender for Cloud product currently has compliance tools within it, and also Microsoft 365 has a dedicated compliance portal. And it was felt by Microsoft that we needed really to have a single pane of glass. So for compliance officers within your organization, they can go to this one single portal and see everything. And also, if you look at the number of solutions that are currently on offer in the 365 compliance portal, it is getting pretty overblown. And especially when you start going to the settings page, there are just now hundreds and hundreds of different options. And you can get to that new portal by simply clicking on the button here on the top right-hand corner. So when you come into the new portal, first things you'll notice is that we have a new address. So it's no longer compliance.microsoft.com, it's now Purview. So it's now this dedicated option or dedicated page that we have. And it also includes other cloud options as well. So if you've got connections to, for example, Amazon or Google, you can seamlessly integrate all of those tools into here as well. So initially you can see that we have all our tools under one page. And the interesting thing to note is in the previous Compliance Center, each of the tools had their own settings, and it was really quite confusing to know where things were. So it's really nice to see now that we have a dedicated settings page, which is really good. Now, this is a work in action at the moment, work in motion, so there are still things to be finished off, but it's looking pretty good. And you can see that we have the access to the dedicated portals here as well. And one of the things that's really nice is it will, as you see, it will pick up where you left off. So if you've made any changes, it will show you, first of all, it will show you where your data is, what kind of data that you've got in terms of privacy as well. I've got Priva enabled on this tenant as well. And you can see it's picking up my sensitive information type. So if you're using information protection labels and so on, it's really useful. Of course, we used to have compliance score. Now it's our compliance posture status. So what's the posture of our overall compliance? And you can see it's showing me different levels of scores, and again you can click into these and get more details. And we also have a compliance manager, which is really useful. It will give you a baseline or a breakdown, I should say, of your posture. And of course, the reason why it's 50% is it's a shared responsibility model. Microsoft do their bit, and of course you have to do your bit as well. Again, each of these panes also have options so that you can drill into them. Now, one of the things I really like is the recommendations area. So you can see it talks about getting started, what the different products are, and of course gives you nice a little bit of advertising if you want to take out additional trials as well. We also have access to Microsoft Learn, so learn.microsoft.com, and I love the fact that they've fully integrated this with the platform as well. So again, there's a whole bunch of different training videos here, which is really nice. And again, you can drill into that a bit further. So before we get into each of the different solutions, what I want to do is I want to go into the settings area here. And you can see that this essentially is really I suppose you might call this an admin center in itself. So at the moment, you can see that I'm on a demo account at the moment. So I've not actually got a subscription. It's a demo subscription to show you. But first of all, one of the things that you're going to want to do is come into roles and scopes. And you can see that, you may know that we have what we call RBAC or role-based access control. And, the global admin, of course, can pretty much do everything, except some of the security and compliance roles, you need to have dedicated permissions for that. So I can click into here and it shows me, for example, all the different roles, so admin roles, which are relevant here. And you can see that the global admin is obviously the most important one. But we also have those other admin roles as well. So, it's reasonable to think that within an organization, you're not going to have 50 global admins. You're more likely to segment them down into different role groups. So depending on job function and so on. So for example, if somebody is responsible for security or compliance, if they did need to have global access, one of the things that you might want to consider is a global reader role. You can see that we all, as well as those role groups, you can also create individual permissions as well. So if you wanted to grant individual permissions, of course, you can either do this here or you can do it in Microsoft Entra. In terms of compliance, it shows you as well how many users have actually got these roles. So again, for the different types of roles, that's quite useful. Now, the other thing that we've also got is you've also got role groups as well. So again, in here, when it comes to compliance, there are really quite a few different compliance, what we call sub-roles. So, for example, within your organization, you might have a dedicated person responsible for, let's say, insider risk management, or you might have a privacy officer, and so on. So you can see that there are different sub-roles within here. And if you want to simply add a user or give a user access, first of all, you click onto the role, as you can see, and it shows you the different sub-roles that are included within the group. And to add your users in, you simply click on Edit and then choose the actual user here. So first things first, you want to sort out your admin roles before you do anything. Now, one thing that we've also got here is something called an adaptive scope. So an adaptive scope, in previous, incarnations of OSs, it's easier to basically assign users permissions to a particular role or a function. And the problem with that is if the user's job changes, or if they leave, or if they get promoted, sometimes you have something called permissions creep. So with this adaptive scopes, and you can see here, I've gone ahead and created an adaptive scope for my sales team. So essentially anyone within the sales team will pick up the adaptive scope. So, you know, if you move to marketing, or if you change your role or change your job into HR, then you'll dynamically come out of that and no longer be affected by that particular scope. And of course, you can create many, many different scopes here. So definitely check out this. This is probably one of the first things that you would really want to do. Now, as well as roles and scopes, the other thing that you probably want to take a look at is data connectors. And literally there are hundreds of different data connectors. As I've mentioned, Microsoft 365 and Azure is essentially a multi-cloud solution. So if you've got solutions in Azure or in Amazon or something like that, you obviously want to connect that in terms of compliance. So you can go to the learn.microsoft.com article here, or you can take a look at some of these other connectors here. So if you're using things like Salesforce, ServiceNow, various, HR products and things like that, you definitely want to click on these connectors and connect your data so that you can view it in the Compliance Center. Now, just one thing to mention, that some of these ultimately you're billed for processing power, and you're also billed for storage and log analytics. So potentially there could be additional costs here, but given everything else, it is an invaluable tool, and I honestly think you would probably use this. So definitely take a look at the various connectors. Now, the other thing that I wanted to just quickly mention is here in devices, I don't have any in the moment, but you can see that we have an onboarding and an offboarding solution. This is for Defender for Endpoint, which of course is the agent. Now, I'm actually not using this at the moment, but if you were, you can choose whether you want to deploy it to Windows 10 or 11, and also Mac OS as well. And you can choose how you want to deploy that client. So you can either deploy it through Config Manager, you can deploy it through MDM, if you're using VDI, Virtual Desktop Interface, or the classic group policy options there. Anyway, you can find this both in the Microsoft Purview and also in Defender for Endpoint as well. So those being the main settings, we now have the specific settings for the various solutions, and these include things like communications, compliance, data lifecycle management, data loss prevention, e-discovery, information protection, and of course records management as well. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these obviously here, but just a few important ones to note. In fact, in most of these, where it's pulling out reports on individuals, an interesting thing is, do you want to produce anonymized versions of reports, or do you want to view the names of the actual person? So in terms of communications compliance, insider risk management, again, you might want to view the actual name of the person here. In most of these tools, you'll probably get the same things, for example, notice templates. So with a notice template, if a violation happens, for example, if I try and set a credit card number out and it's covered by an information protection policy, you might want to be notified or have the user notified. And you can see here I've already created a notice policy which I can edit. But you can have multiple templates here. So that's an important one. With Compliance Manager, so just quickly going through Compliance Manager, again, things that you might want to monitor, of course, because all of these compliance tools are monitoring users, that they're compliant. So again, you can select the user, you can decide, you can export the report, you can delete any history, you can reassign any improvement actions to another user, for example. Things like data loss prevention policy, so DLP policies for reporting. Do you want to put in an email address of an admin, for example? Then you've got things like data loss prevention policies or data loss prevention, DLP. Really important that you take a look at some of these. So for example, when you set up data loss prevention policies, it's essentially preventing data from leaking outside your organization. So again, we have some exclusions here. So if there's certain file paths that you don't want to be excluded, you might want to set up an evidence collection for file activities on devices, things like network share coverage and exclusions, any restricted apps and groups. It's important that you come in here and you set that up prior to using many of these tools. Another one is information protection. So we also have something here very important. This is the information protection scanner. So in an environment where, for example, you're in hybrid, you can download an agent, and that agent will then deploy to your servers that have got, for example, rights management services on them. And it will, when you move data across to the cloud, it will bring in those labels as well. So this is really useful for that, the fact that you can scan. And here it tells you how to download that scanner and what it does. So that's really important. Again, inside of risk management, you've got things like features which talk about, anonymized reports. How do you want to gather the data? What do you want to look for? What policy indicators, for example, if you're using, of course, this is insider risks. So I'm not onboarded any devices. Who's copying files? Who's sending files to people? Who's maybe trying to forward sensitive information? So, for example, with devices, you might want to monitor who's copying content to USB sticks, for example. You might want to look at risky browsers. So, for example, who's looking at hacking websites, phishing websites, and so on. Do you really want those types of individuals within your organization? So you see what I mean? So, and there's tons of settings here. So key thing is you need to get that correct. Okay, so once you've got the settings all sorted out, I'm going to pop back to the various solutions here. So I'm just going to click back to my home page, back at Microsoft Purview. I said it was a single pane of glass. So first of all, what we have is something called the data catalog. And at the moment you can see you can bring in Azure, you can bring in Microsoft Fabric, and also you can add in any other cloud access that you have. So again, some of these features, by the way, integrate with the likes of Microsoft Azure. So you would need to have an appropriate subscription with that. You can also, if I click into source types here, you can see that there are a number of different source types where the content could come from. And you can see this is a perfect example of how Azure and Microsoft 365 integrate. Now, of course, if you don't have any content in Azure, for example, Azure Backup, then you don't need to worry about that here. You can also set up what we call business glossaries. So the glossaries, your business terms, for example, and you've also got things like your assets. One of the things that I really like is the ability to go in and have a look at data sharing. Now, at the moment, as I said, this is a pretty empty tenant. There's not a lot in here, but you can see you can create shares, and also it provides access to shared resources here, and any invites will appear here. And the idea here is that it's a unified portal for this. So at the moment, you can see that this is just pointing to Azure, but it's expected that this will eventually point to the likes of SharePoint as well. And you can obviously imagine the power that that will then bring in. So it's really useful. So back here in the new portal, what I want to do is just give you a sense of how some of these tools have changed. The one that I'll pick to demo today is the information protection demo. So coming in here, you can now see that they've completely changed the interface. And you can also see you can register and scan multi-cloud data sources, which, think of the power that that brings. It's just amazing. Now you can also see that we have a number of reports, and again it's that single pane of glass across your entire digital estate here. It also shows you the coverage of your things like sensitivity labels, and again you've got reading information and also access to learn.microsoft.com. But the fact is you've got no settings here anymore. Everything is connected in one single place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here into sensitivity labels, and in here the first thing is I'm going to create a new label, of course, and I'm going to say Oslo Finance Confidential, and again we can copy this label across and just pop it in here. And again, you can set the priority. I can put in a description here for users. I'll just copy and paste this in at the moment. I can also choose a nice color. So let's go with the blue option, I think. So here we can see, okay, how do you want to define the scope for the label? So do you want to deploy it to items? Do I want to deploy it to schematized data? And also you can do groups and sites. Now you can see in this particular demo tenant, the groups and sites option is not switched on. However, the process to switch it on is really useful. You just click on that little link there, and essentially there it shows you exactly how to do it. There's basically a few, just a couple actually, of PowerShell commands. So once you've enabled those PowerShell commands, this will then light up. I won't do that here because I would have to log off and log back on again. But hopefully you'll get the idea. So I'm going to click on next, and it says, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to control access? Do you want to apply content marking and protect Teams and meetings and chats? Now, just to mention that this feature does require a Teams premium license, and you can see that's the reason why I can't select that. Unfortunately, with the new Microsoft demo tenants, it doesn't permit me to add these features in anymore. So I'm going to say I want to control access and apply some content marking. Let's do that. And then it says, okay, what about permissions? So do you want to assign some permissions? And again, I can do that. You can see it gives me the option. Do I want to, for everybody in my organization, authenticated users, specific users and groups, or specific email domains? I'm going to say, for everyone here, I'm going to do that. And I then choose the permission level. And as you can see, these are classic SharePoint permission levels. So from the most basic viewer, so that's kind of a read-only option, to a co-owner, but in this case, I'll say a co-author. So they can author content, but they're not an owner of it. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And next, but just a good security feature, by the way, double key encryption. If you're using the latest clients, the latest Office clients, you can use double key encryption. And there's a little link there to a learn.microsoft.com article for that. I now want to say, I'm going to go with content marking. You can add a watermark, of course, across the document. You can add a header. I can add a footer. And again, I can also customize the text. I can say, I want to pop this in. I can change the font size. I can change the font color, the alignment. And again, I'm just going to go next here. Now at this point, it's asking you, do you want to set up auto labeling? And this is essentially where it integrates data loss prevention policies. So if you've got a template, finance template, for example, that says, spot a credit card number or something like that, then auto apply this label. Now, just for the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make this a manual process so I can show you. I have done this in previous videos. So again, check out my compliance playlist and you'll see them. Okay. I can also define protection for groups and sites. Again, because I didn't run that little PowerShell command at the beginning, you can see that's not showing up at the moment. But again, I've done this in a previous video. Auto labeling for schematized data, I'm not going to bother with that. And I'm just going to go ahead and create my label. Now, at this point, it's going to basically ask me, what do I want to do with my label? Do I want to publish this to users and apps, which will essentially create a new policy? Or do I want to add it to a policy that I've got? And that's the option that I'm going to choose here. So I'm just going to say, don't apply it to a policy yet. So now that I've done that, I can now obviously click into the policies. And we have a number of things here. You can see that you've got publishing policies and also those auto labeling policies, which obviously integrate into things like data loss prevention policies. So at the moment, if I come into publishing policies, you can see that I've got a couple of publishing. I've got one called global sensitivity and highly confidential. So I'm going to click onto this one. I'm going to say, yeah, I like this one. I'm going to add the label to this policy. So you can see the list of published labels are here. I'm simply going to add this and I choose to edit. And I can now scroll down and there is my new Oslo Finance Confidential label. So next, of course, it says, do you want to add an admin unit? I'm just going to push this out to the full directory, again, to all users and groups. At this point, you can choose how the policy is going to be applied. So do you want to require the users to assign a label? Only thing about that, folks, is if you're going to do that, you need to really train your users. So again, think about that. You can also set a default label as well. So you can choose a default label or let the user choose one. And also we have this one here, apply labels to emails. So for example, if there is a document that's got a label in it, you might want to also, the email inherits the label priority or recommends users if the attachment contains sensitivity. So again, you might want to do that. Again, you get the same choice for things like calendar events, Fabric and Power BI as well. So once you've created that, I simply submit that. And as I always say, folks, when you publish labels and label policies, conditional access, any of these things, I would always create a single user and assign the policies to a single user just to try it out, make sure that it works, and then roll it out to everybody. Now, this can take up to 24 hours to populate, but essentially what will happen here is that when a user, for example, goes into Microsoft 365, they open up a document here. And of course, either in the portal or in the Office software, you will see that you have that sensitivity option up here on the right. And you can see that we have our various label options. And you can see that Oslo hasn't showed up yet because it does take a little bit of time to come through. But needless to say, that is sensitivity policies here. So the other thing to mention is we also have something called protection policies, and I'm actually going to cover these in a future video, so watch out for that. Now, the other thing that we also have, which is really useful here, is the classic data explorer. So if you want to know exactly where your data is and what classifiers it has associated with that, then you can run this little data explorer, and as you can see, it will look for any things like where your retention labels, sensitivity labels, where your sensitive information types are. So you can see here it's pulled out things with 327 names, 83 physical addresses, and you can click onto that and it will show you approximately where that data is. And you've also got things like the Activity Explorer as well. So this will give you a nice kind of graphical representation, a kind of a bar chart type scenario of where your labels are and how many of them that you're actually using. Now, one of the things I really like about the new information protection portal, though, is the fact that it gives you this nice pane of glass on where the labels are located, and and also you've got the various reports here, and the reports are super nice. And I would say it's the same for all of the Purview solutions. They give you way more details than we had in the future. So that's really nice that you can export them. You can see at the moment, I'm just using Microsoft 365. I don't have any data in Microsoft Azure at the moment. So as I said, definitely check out the new Purview portal. It's really nice, purview.microsoft.com. So there you have it, Microsoft Purview, the new admin center. What did you think? I think they've done a pretty good job, actually. I'm quite impressed. It's kind of nice to see this kind of cohesion coming together, don't you think? Hey, listen, if you enjoyed it and you've got questions or anything like that, just as always, get them down below. And if you've not subscribed, go ahead, come and join us. It would be great to have you on board. That's it for today. I'll see you soon. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy. And while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.